Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Today we'll be doing a recap for the movie Hereditary. Before getting into our video, subscribe to our channel to avoid missing updates. Spoiler alert, the film starts with a window revealing a treehouse in the backyard. A workshop is filled with miniature models, including an extraordinary one of the house itself. Steve Graham walks into Peter's room to wake him up for his grandmother Ellen's funeral. Before he leaves, he asks him if his sister slept in her room last night. He exits the house to find his 13-year-old daughter Charlie. As Annie is already sitting in the car waiting for them, Steve finds Charlie sleeping in the treehouse and he scolds her for sleeping there. Annie gives the eulogy at her mother's funeral in the funeral home. She calls her a very secretive and private woman. During the speech, Charlie makes noise while drawing a strange sketch. Her father sees her doing it and stops her. Later, Charlie walks over to the open casket and sees her grandmother's necklace. She looks at the other people saying goodbye and notices a woman put something on the dead woman's lips. Then Charlie opens chocolate and starts eating right there. Her family walks over to her and asks if it has nuts because she is allergic. After the funeral, they returned home and walked inside the house, greeting Maxie. Annie asks Steve if she should be sadder. Later, she is working on a miniature of her mother when Steve comes in and they chat a little. Peter is in his room playing the guitar and Steve checks upon him. Annie goes over to Charlie's room. She sees a drawing of her grandmother and notices how distressed Charlie is. Annie tries to comfort her by saying that she was her favorite. Charlie claims her grandmother has always wished Charlie was a boy. Charlie, much to Annie's confusion, wonders aloud who will care for her now that Ellen is no longer alive, and her mom tells her that her dad and brother will, but she doesn't like the answer. After looking through a memory book in Annie's workshop, Annie later has a haunting vision of Ellen. Charlie is in her school the next day and her teacher catches her playing with a toy instead of answering the quiz. A bird is killed when it flies into Charlie's classroom windows. Charlie steps outside, cut off the bird's head and puts it in her pocket. Someone is watching her doing it from across the street. Later, Annie sees that her mother's room door is open. When she closes it, she sees a triangle on the floor. Annie asks Steve if he went into the room. They then lock the room and Steve takes the key. Peter gives his dad the phone saying the call is from the cemetery. They tell him that Ellen's grave has been desecrated, but he decides not to tell his wife. Annie claims to be going to the movies, but she attends a grief counseling support group. It is dark outside when she arrives at the meeting. Annie is forthright about her mother's mental health issues, including dissociative identity disorder and dementia. To attend a party, Peter pretends to be attending a school event and Annie forces Charlie to accompany him. Peter leaves Charlie unattended at the party and Charlie, who has a severe nut allergy, eats chocolate cake containing walnuts and goes into anaphylactic shock. Charlie leans out the window for air as Peter drives her to the hospital. When Peter swerves to avoid a dead deer, she is violently decapitated by a telephone pole. Peter drives home in a calm daze after sitting and staring in entranced shock. When Annie comes outside when it is light out, she is horrified to discover her daughter's headless body in the backseat of the car. His family holds Charlie's funeral. Steve takes a look through Charlie's sketchbook. Peter withdraws and suffers from guilt over his sister's death. Annie becomes enraged and resentful of Peter for the incident, and Steve desperately attempts to mediate peace between the two. Annie rejoins the support group and meets a woman named Joan, who invites Annie to speak with her because she understands what it's like to lose a child. Annie pays a visit to Joan's apartment to talk. She tells Joan that she sleepwalks and once doused Peter and Charlie with paint thinner and lit a match, leaving them both horrified despite Annie's effort to convince them that she was only sleepwalking. Joan also discusses how her son and grandson drowned months before. Annie continues to make models at home, but she has created a full-scale model of the accident this time. Stephen finds her and reprimands her, hoping Peter will not see it. Later, Annie sleepwalks again and has a nightmare in which she walks into Peter's room and declares that she never wanted to be his mother and that she tried to miscarry. It culminates with them being doused in paint thinner and set on fire. She awakens and takes Charlie's sketchbook to conduct a seance. She wakes up Stephen and Peter to show that she is telling the truth. The presence in the room shifts a glass on the table and manipulates the flame on a candle. Annie then begins speaking in Charlie's voice, perplexed as to what is going on, until Stephen splashes her with water to wake her up. Peter has a recurring hallucination of seeing Charlie. When he wakes up and sees Annie, he accuses her of pulling on his head, but she denies it. When she notices Charlie's sketchbook contains images that appear to threaten Peter, she throws the book into the fireplace, but her clothes begin to burn alongside the text. She gets it and goes to Joan's apartment for advice, but Joan isn't there. Annie goes through her mother's belongings and discovers a photo album that connects Joan to Ellen, who is depicted as the leader of a coven. Annie also finds a book containing information about Paimon, a demon king. According to the book, Paimon wishes to inhabit the body of a male host in exchange for riches and rewards from the person who summoned Paimon. Ellen had been attempting to conjure Paimon in one of her male family members the entire time. Annie discovers Ellen's headless body in the attic of her house. Joan can be heard shouting "I expel you" at Peter from behind a fence at school. Peter notices Charlie's clucking during class. Peter appears to be possessed and slams his head into his desk, snapping out of his trance with cries of terror in pain. Annie stands in the pouring rain beneath the treehouse with Ellen's scrapbook, and we notice that Peter's room in the real house behind her does not exist. Steve brings Peter home. Annie approaches the car completely dry with no sign of rain. Annie informs Steve that Ellen's body is in their attic but has been decapitated. Annie also shows Steve photographs of Joan and Ellen wearing the Paimon seal. Annie explains that her family was cursed when she attempted to contact Charlie. Annie also explains the significance of Charlie's sketchbook and how Steve must destroy it to save Peter. In the background, Peter sleeps in his room unaffected by the conversation. Steve, who doesn't believe Annie's wild claims, accuses her of digging up Ellen's grave. When Steve refuses to burn the sketchbook, Annie throws it back into the fire even though she believes it will kill her. Instead, Steve bursts into flames. Peter gets up to search the house while his possessed mother hovers in the corner above his bed. When Peter leaves his room, the ladder to the attic is gone. Peter discovers his father's charred body. Annie, possessed, pursues Peter to the attic. The attic ladder has been removed. After Peter climbs the ladder and retracts it into the upstairs ceiling, Annie jumps up and furiously pounds her head on the attic door. Peter calls out to her and then looks around the attic and finds that the place is set up for some ritual with him in the center of it. He thinks he is dreaming and tries to wake himself up by slapping his face. Peter looks up and sees his mother cutting her head off. Then he sees more naked old people. He jumps out of the window. The sound of a head falling can be heard from the attic. Peter's head appears to be knocked out when it collides with the ground below. After the strangely glowing light seen previously hovers around Peter's body, he wakes. Peter follows his mother's headless body to float to the treehouse. Peter makes the popping sound that Charlie used to make, follows his mother toward the treehouse, and notices the naked worshippers in the bushes. When he gets to the treehouse, there are many other people there. He sees his sister's head mounted on a Paimon statue with everyone, including his mother's and grandmother's body, bowing to her. Joan walks up to him, putting a crown on him. Joan tells Peter, Charlie, that she is Paimon, one of the kings of hell. They have summoned him from the depths of hell and given themselves over to him. That's where the film ends. That's all we've got for today, guys. Don't hesitate to like the video and leave a comment telling us how much you enjoyed this movie. We'll see you in the following one. Until then, goodbye.